Hey, what is up, YouTube? Kolst here. We are back with the second to last review. Although it might show up on YouTube in a different order, possibly, we don't know, but this is Warlock, so let's jump right into it. First one we have here is Endgame. 2 mana shadow spell for Warlock. Resurrect your last demon that died. So it's your last demon that died. A lot of these cards are like a random demon that died or something like that, but like this is the last one that died, so you know which the last one is, so you use it whenever you actually want to, right? You can trade something off and then use it, or you just have a big demon die, which there are going to be some of in this set. So there's going to be things you can do with this. Overall, it's like, I mean, as long as you have a decent demon, I mean, if you think about it, even like a Flame Imp, right? You can play a Flame Imp and then do this, and then hey, you're getting a 2 mana 3/2 is not that bad, right? As long as you have any demons, this is probably fine, right? So it should just be a good card. It really should just be good. I don't know if I would call it like a 5-star card, but because there is a chance, I guess, you don't have demons, but it's never going to be that bad, right? So it's reasonable. So based off of the synergy, this might even be like a 4-star card, but we'll see. I don't know. Normally you would not think it would be that good, but it's probably pretty good with what we have, because we're going to talk about this in a minute here. But next up we have Cursed Campaign. 3 mana shadow spell. Give a friendly minion death rattle. Summon 2 copies of this minion that are dormant for 2 turns. This is a big payoff for one of the other big demons we're going to talk about as well. Although dormant for 2 turns is pretty painful. One thing to keep in mind is that, like, you know, dormant ticks at the beginning of your turn. So if you trade it off yourself with this, it's technically worse. You'd actually rather like force your opponent to, because then it's still the same thing, but then they're not going to want to give it to you, so it's a little weird. It's kind of like a game of chicken going on there, basically. But overall, I mean, it's like, it's like a grave rune, except the dormant for 2 turns makes it a lot worse. So it should be like a lot worse than just a grave rune. It's kind of crazy that grave rune is so as strong as it is, because you just get, for 1 more mana, you just lose the dormant. It's kind of crazy. But it could still have pretty significant upside, but it's a little iffy. You probably want to have like very specific synergies, which there will be some of for this, but just that dormant makes it really conditional and situational. It can actually take up board space. That's also true. But yeah, the fact that it's dormant, like Grave Rune is really good, but it's like the fact it's a Grave Rune that with the dormant, that makes it so much worse. So I don't know. Makes me want to say I can't rate it above like a 2 maybe. You probably still want it because it's still a lot of value in the right situation, but it's like, man, that makes it so much worse than like a Grave Rune, because a Grave Rune is at least a 4, but like that makes it so much worse. You know. Next up we have Malefic. Malefic? How do you even say that? Like Rook. 3 mana, 5/6, battle cry, attack your hero. So it's like a power crept pit lord, I guess. There is a chance that if you have a weapon, it's actually bad, because then if you have a weapon, this thing actually takes damage from your weapon. Your Warlock is usually not a problem, but it could be a problem in theory. Otherwise, I mean, there was that neutral card that's a 4 mana 5/7 that does it. Not sure, you could use this with Harp as well, but 4 mana 5/7 that dealt 5 damage to you was, you know, very good card. This is better because it's only a 3 mana. It's a 3 mana 5/6, which is better than a 4 mana 5/7, right? So it's a lot of stats. You're taking 5 damage, which you don't want to do, but you're getting 2/2 in stats. It's pretty good. Is Void Virtuoso? Yeah, there's that too, but then you also, we don't know if it's going to be an arena or not. So if that's in, that's also a nice thing, because you could play that on 1, and then it might just, you might just be able to do this without the cost anyway. If you're doing it on curve, you usually just don't care that much anyway, right? So overall, I mean, it's overstat enough that it's probably pretty good, right? I mean, Like, I'd much rather have this than a Flame Imp, probably, for example. So this thing's probably at least a 3-star card. It has synergy with just, like, you know, you can play this with endgame, you know, and then eventually you'll get a 2-mana 5/6 as well. It's probably just worth it. Like, you probably rate this like at least 3, maybe even more like a 4-star card potentially. Not quite so sure, but it should be pretty good. You probably don't want to draft 5 of these, but it's an epic, so you're probably not going to have the opportunity anyway. So, seems like it should be pretty good. Next up, Sketch Artist. 3-mana 3/3. Battle Cry. Draw a Shadow Spell, get a temporary copy of it. Sometimes, so it's a card you don't really want to play on curve because you don't get to use a temporary copy if you play it on curve. But if you know it's in your deck, which you should, you can play this with some idea of whether or not you're going to be able to play a Shadow Spell and hopefully use it when you actually draw it with this. So it's a pretty interesting card. Limited by the fact you don't want to play on curve, but if you have some really good Shadow Spell, I mean, the other thing you can do is if you've actually, you know, if you've played this guy, for example, and then it's died, and if it's like turn 7 or something, then you can actually double endgame it immediately, right? You can play the temporary copy and the actual copy in that case, if you have the endgame in your deck, and if it's your only Shadow Spell or something. There's some really cool things you can do with it as a result of that, right? So overall, I mean, as long as you have a Shadow Spell in your deck, it's a good card. And it could be a very good card in certain situations. It's not going to be super reliable at being like super crazy, but it's nice to have that kind of upside. So overall, I guess, I don't know. That probably makes it like what, like a 3.5, maybe only a 3, honestly. But like, it's a good card. You'll take it sometimes. Probably just like a 3, honestly, but it's useful. A little too inconsistent to just be super high rated. Next up, we have Tabletop. Tabletop Role Player, 4-mana 4/3 with Miniaturize. Battle Cry, give a friendly demon +2 attack and immune this turn. This card independently seems pretty weak, you know, because it requires you have a demon. If you have, I mean, this guy, it's nice, but at the same time, it's like, it's not like this thing, your opponent's not likely to have anything that contested exactly anyway. So it's a little weird. Yeah, it feels like it would be something that gives lifesteal based off of how much lifesteal they like giving other classes, but I guess not Warlock, apparently. It's just weird because it's like, there aren't that many like rush demons or anything, right? It's just kind of weird. Like, there's not much consistent stuff you can consistently do with this. And then, so I'm not really sure what the idea of this, of what you're even supposed to do, other than just like have a demon on board and trade, obviously. But like, there's nothing to like really activate it exactly. You can do with Doomguard. You could, I mean, if you play Doomguard, though, you might end up like discarding. This is too expensive, and then this, you might end up like discarding this thing anyway. So it's like not necessarily even gonna work. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. Still, I mean, honestly, if this didn't even just say demon, if it just said give a friendly minion, I'm not even sure if it would be that good. You know, it'd probably be pretty good at that point because you'd get this thing. But like, I'm not even sure if that would be that good. You know, if it wasn't limited to demon. The fact that it's limited to demon just makes it seem way too inconsistent. So this seems like probably the worst miniaturized card we've seen. And this is the 10th out of 11 classes. Just, I don't know, it's like too conditional. I guess it's like a big board upside, but it's just feels too conditional, honestly. I'll say it's like a 2 out of 5, I guess. Next up, Game Master Nemy. 5-mana 3/6. Battle Cry, draw a demon. Death Rattle, swap places with it. So the idea of this is that I think it was like Doomguard's actually rotating back into core, right? So you could actually have Doomguard. That'd be kind of the idea of this, or you swap it with one of the other big demons, which we will talk about one in a second. It is a big taunt demon. We'll talk about it very soon. but that would be the idea of this. It's a little weird though, because like if you have any small demons at all, this gets a little weird, but it's still, I mean, even if you swap a small demon, like hopefully you just wouldn't, if you knew you had this, you probably just wouldn't draft the small demons, right? But even if you did, it's not that bad because it's still 5 mana 3/6. It's going to be really delayed, but then you can play it again and then reroll it because it'll swap back into your hand, right? And then you can go for it again and then you'll eventually get it. It's just the one thing that's weird is because it's a 3/6, you're not necessarily going to be able to kill it off immediately. So it could be very slow to actually get to chain it. That would be part of the problem. And then eventually you're around demons and then you can't chain it anymore. But the fact this is a card that benefits a lot from being pick one, because then you actually will try to make it work, right? So that would be one thing that would help, is if you had kick-out consumption. Yeah. Overall, it's card pool dependent. We don't know how many big demons are going to be in. There's a few in this set though, but like, yeah, we don't exactly know. That's one thing we just don't exactly know, but it should be pretty good. It's essentially just like a really sticky minion. I guess I would say it's like a 4-star card probably. It's probably just not consistent enough to be like a 5. Because it is good, it's just, I mean, like it should be good. It's just it's a little too conditional. A little too many ifs and stuff. To really rate it is like truly broken. Next up, because it could also just get silenced. But next up, Wheel of Death. 8 mana shadow spell. Destroy your deck in 5 turns. Destroy the enemy hero. Probably supposed to just run this in wild with Demon Seed, huh? There's just no way, because like there's actually no there's no chance you can play this and not die. There's just no way. Keep in mind, like, you take like 15 damage of fatigue, right? Before you actually kill them. Do you actually take the fatigue before? I wonder if you take the fatigue before you actually kill them. Like, do you take 15 or do you only take 10? That actually makes a pretty big difference. This would be a random cast in Mage that would kill you too. It's kind of funny. I think it's only 10, okay. But yeah, there's just, you're just so unlikely to have the amount of survivability you would need to actually live, because you're pyroblasting yourself by playing this, in addition to you don't get any draws, in addition to you're passing your turn. It's just, I mean, there's no way. We just move on. Next, Wretched Queen. Yeah, just don't play 8 mana spells as mage, apparently. This is the big taunt demon. So this is 8 mana 4/4 demon with taunt. With Death Rattle, summon 2 4/6 knights also with taunt. Those are also demons though. It's actually bad with the end game potentially. So if you're against this, you might actually want to make sure you kill both of these at the same time, or at least one of the knights as well, just so they can't get the queen back. It's one thing you'd actually want to keep in mind. Overall, the one problem with this card, it's a lot of taunt. But obviously they could just hex it or something. But in general, because it's only an 8 mana 4/4, it's also really, really vulnerable to silence. Because like the 8 mana 5/7 that summons the 5/5 lifesteal was pretty vulnerable to silence, but this is even more vulnerable to silence, right? But yeah, this is the big demon you'd be trying to swap out with the Nemy and trying to resummon with the end game and all of that. So forget, I think like I mean, it's probably better than the 8 mana 5/7 one. Like that thing is potential lifesteal, but it's really hard to actually make work. This thing is just so much more taunt that it's probably just better. So I don't know if I would rate that thing. That thing was probably like a 3.5. Like this would probably be like a 4.5. I mean, it's so much taunt though. It's just, you know, the vulnerability to getting stolen or removed or whatever is the whole is the big problem, right? nowadays. But like standalone, it's a really good card, so right like that. Next up is Crane Game, and this is another one for the big demon synergy. 9 mana, summon 2 copies of 2 demons. Summon copies of 2 demons in your deck. Has to be 2 different demons. Well, does it have to be? If you have 2 copies of this, I guess you could probably get 2 of the same thing, right? There's a lot of this stuff that's like, I mean, if you have the right demons, you would take this. The problem is if you draw the demons, they're not in your deck anymore, and this won't even work, right? That's going to make this like really inconsistent, right? You would need to have way more demons than you could actually realistically expect to have to make this work, because it's you can't even play this until turn 9, right? That's a problem. That probably makes this just a little bit too inconsistent. You can't really draft it probably. I mean, if you just happen to know that you have like 4 of these, you know, like, okay, by all means. If you also have like, you know, 2 of these as well, like you could go for it, but it's like, that's just not nearly consistent enough, you would think, right? Has the upside, but it's so hard to actually make that work, just because you're gonna draw half of your cards already. You're just not gonna have that many big demons probably. Is Dimensional Ripper good? I don't even remember that card does, because no one played it ever, so no. This is probably, it's like, it's hard for me to rate it like a 1 because it has so high potential. So it might get a 2 just because of how good it can be. But I realistically just don't want to draft this probably, because it's just a little too hard to make work. Last up we have Table Flip. This is also kind of anti-synergy with the other thing, because this forces you to life tap, because this is like a hand lock card kind of. Because Table Flip, 10 mana shadow spell, but it's cost 1 less for each other card in your hand, and it deals 3 damage to all enemy minions. It does not go face. So this is a card that kind of wants you to just like tap in the early game, or otherwise just generate cards somehow. Which Warlock has some ways to do. Not really in this set, right? I guess. Although I guess you could, I don't know, there's some synergy with like the sketch artist, for example, I guess. That would be free, essentially. I mean, this thing is basically like a Warlock Prismatic Beam, basically. More like you just kind of chill out for a while, and then you just use this as part of a big swing. It does get really cheap, but you'd have to be like tapping a lot to do that, in which case you're not really doing anything. It's a little risky to do that. And if you play 2 of these, the second one's going to cost more. But it's not that hard to make this, like, you know, in the mid mana range where it costs like 4 or something. It's just that's a little more cards than you would usually have in Warlock, you would think, right? But it could be reasonable. So in an aggressive card, this is just in an aggressive deck, this card is just unplayable because you're just not gonna have the hand size, right? But if you are trying to play a slower Warlock, it's a good card. So overall, like, I would probably rate it like a 2 because of that, but I think, you know, players that want to play more like a slow Warlock, you probably rate it like more like a 3 out of 4. 3 or 4. It's actually good with Sludge on Wheels is the one card that's really good with, because that card actually adds cards to your hand too. That's one nice thing, but otherwise it doesn't really make sense with that kind of strategy. I think it's alright, you know, you'll take it in some decks, you just won't take it in others. But anyway, with that, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Appreciate you guys all hanging out. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.